I'm Shari Jonas, and this is Launch. If your young adult is struggling with low self-confidence and motivation because they don't know what they want to do with their life, this episode might be exactly what you need. My guest today is Kristin Clark, a career exploration coach who works with young adults ages 16 to 26 to help them find a career path that really lights them up. She uses the CliftonStrengths assessment, which I mentioned back in episode 25. That's the tool she uses to help young adults discover their natural strengths and their interests. You see, when Kristen took the assessment herself, she saw its potential, and that's when she developed her own coaching formula specifically designed to help young adults realize there is a career out there that they can enjoy. Imagine what that would do for your young adult who feels hopeless. And even if they're already working, but they're unhappy and they feel stuck, Kristen helps them pinpoint what it is about their job that energizes them, or they'll explore new options. If you want to reach out to Kristen, her contact information will be in the show notes. She'd love to know that you heard her on this episode. And as always, please share it with another parent who really needs to hear it. Remember, hit that follow button so you never miss an episode. I am so excited to have Kristen on today because I love what she's doing for young adults. So let's get started. Kristen, welcome to Launch. I am so excited that you can join me today. It's so funny how the universe works because it was a few episodes ago, actually number 25 for those who haven't listened yet. And I'm talking to parents about helping their kids to discover themselves. And I suggest the very tool that you specialize in. But there's so much more that has to be done other than just completing an assessment. And that's what we're going to talk about today, specifically what services you offer young adults who are unsure of their career path. And I think the incredible gift that they walk away with. I mean, I think this is a huge issue that's really impacting young adults in so many ways. Before we get into your process, tell us a bit about yourself and really what led you to working with kids between the ages of 16 and 26.
Sure. So Shari, the very first thing I always tell everybody is I love to work. I'm one of those crazy people that I get excited about going to work. And there was a time that I didn't get excited about going to work. And truthfully, it scared me. While I was in corporate America, I was always gunning for that VP position. And I got it. And I was so excited. And I did that for 6 years. And I hated every minute of it. And I couldn't figure out why. And what I found out, and it took somebody else helping me figure it out, by a new CEO coming to town. And, you know, when a new CEO comes into a corporation, guess what happens? Head of marketing is always the first one to get their head chopped off and walk out the door with their box. Mm-hmm. And that was me. And on the drive home, I called my husband and I said, honey, I just got fired. And I was grinning from ear to ear, and I'm sure he could hear that. And he did not even take 2 seconds. And he said, good, you hated that job. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yes, I did. But here was the challenge. Now what? Because I had no idea why I hated what I was doing when you are dealing with somebody that loves to work. I met somebody that had just gotten certified as a Gallup Strengths coach. And she's like, Kristen, do you want to take this assessment? I was like, yeah, I love all those things. When she explained to me my strengths, it was just like this revelation of no wonder I hated this role. And what it boiled down to, Shari, is when I got into this VP position, I decided that I needed to be this great strategic mastermind because, of course, I was helping to run a company. So that's what you do. Well, guess what? I'm not. In fact, I'm not even anywhere close. In fact, when I saw my list of 34 strengths, most of the strategic type thinking themes, they were all at the bottom of my list. Wow. So basically what it was telling you is I was feeling like I was running through mud every day, doing something I wasn't built to do. Mm. And I was like, that was the problem. When I figured that out, I took a step back and I went, who else needs to know this? And I kept going kind of back in time in my own life. And I settled on, I was like, when I was in college, if I would have known this, think about the different decisions I could have been making for myself. And my kids were getting ready to go into college as well. My oldest was thinking about college and we were making those decisions. So I looked at him and I was like, wow, this is the age group that I could really have an impact on so that they can fall in love with what they do and they're not struggling. And the other thing that I realized during this time frame was in our high schools, everybody's trying to get these kids into college, right? It's like, here's how you get in, here's how you take the test, here's how you do the essays. Nobody's trying to help them figure out what's going to make you a happy adult. Mm. And that was the missing component. And when I saw that, I was like, we've got all these adults that are not happy in what they do. And it's starting here. We've got to help them here.
So why do you think that so many young adults feel lost or unsure about their career paths? When you have them in front of you, what are they telling you? How are they explaining that feeling of being so unsure and so lost?
I'm laughing because so many things are going through my head when you're asking me those questions, because this really isn't anything new, Sherry. We have, and I know you love your research, and I love my research too. Gallup has gone out and done a survey and research on this exact topic for years and years and years. And we consistently see this. 70% of America are not engaged in their work. And what does that mean? They're not happy. They're not having fun. They're not giving it their all. 70%. So this is nothing new that people are confused or don't know what to do career-wise. Now, at this age group, there's a little bit more complexity. Like years ago, we just figured it out, right? We were like, well, whatever, we'll just barrel through and figure it out. We figured it out, but we're still not happy. Mm-hmm. So let's not forget that. Mm-hmm. But we also have this incredibly high cost of college. So, these kids are not stupid. They get the fact that college is expensive, right? They understand it is a burden for most families, right. At least a high thought, the high ticket item for most families. So they understand that. They understand the risk. The other thing is, and we could do a whole show on this, but I'll touch on it. The kids today, they are just more fragile. We just, pull it up by our bootstraps and figure it out. They're not, quite as equipped as we were. And, we could go into all the reasons, but, you've got plenty of shows on that. I've listened to them, but you've got all that complexity. Here's what I hear them tell me. I would tell you 90% of the clients that I have, they say, Kristen, if I pick it and I pick the wrong thing, I'm done. My life's ruined. So they feel like when they're picking a career that they're marrying it. Mm. That's it. And if I mess this up, man, I'm doomed. Right. They don't have this idea of, no, guys, you know what? This is a starting point. Yeah. And you're going to be creating this career for the rest of your life. And I think that's kind of where we fail in society, quite honestly. You think about it, when we got into something, that was our mentality too. Okay, you're an accountant now, go. You're a doctor now, go. Yeah. And, we've shown, you were in different types of corporate roles and doing this now, as was I, mm-hmm. that you can change and adjust. It's just not the norm. I think it's becoming more of the norm where people feel there's more flexibility. But I also think that the way we talk about careers as a family it's not a discussion and let's unfold and let this thing kind of marinate and grow. Mm. It's this finite answer. And that's scary for anybody.
I think one of the reasons that adult children are feeling so lost is because of this social pressure, as you're saying, to figure it all out. And they don't have the guidance or the tools to do that. So you help them by providing that clarity of what they're actually good at. And I mean, you're right. We didn't actually do that much soul searching when we were younger, but also, yes, times were different. And it's funny that you say that, because I just finished an episode where we're talking about why kids are like that. Why are they so fragile? What happened between our generation and their generations? The assessment tool that you used for yourself, was it CliftonStrengths? Is that the one you used?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So okay, why that assessment tool and not others that are out there? What I mean, other than the fact that you did it and you felt such a like it really kind of told you so much about yourself. But why now that tool above and beyond all others that are out there?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I've done them all.
Oh,
I
really?
love, and I hate when people call it a personality assessment, but we'll just call it that for now.
Mhm.
The Clifton Strengths, the reason I fell in love with it is this. In most of your assessments out there, DISC, Enneagram to an extent, the MBFI, Myers-Briggs, people call it that as well. In those assessments, you're one of 16 personality types. With Clifton Strengths, 1 in 33 million people will have the same top 5 strengths that you have in the same order.
Wow.
And right, and I look at that and I go, people are complex.
Mm.
And even though in those 16 personality types, yes, people are different within those. What I love about Clifton Strengths is there's just so much more clarity around where my energy comes from and how I get excited and helping me understand myself because of the clarity around that. When you have 34 themes of strength and you think about it, the reason why it's 33 million is as you layer those on top of each other, they start to react differently.
Hmm.
So that's why it gets more complex. But the reason I love it is you then have the words to be able to say, hey, boss or mom or friend group or team that I'm working on, if I can do these types of activities, you're going to get the best out of me because I was born to do this stuff. I'm good at it. And that is the clarity that I love around this assessment. So it's not an assessment that's going to help you decide on a career, but what it's going to help you do is understand what activities within that career that are going to light you up and make you happy. And when you're doing those things, you feel strong and like you're in the right place.
I love that. Okay, so how does this work? I'm a parent. I'm going to come to you for help. My kid has no idea what they want to do, what they're good at. At least that's what they feel or say to me. Walk me through your process. I'm your
Yeah.
parent. I'm the
Yeah.
parent.
I get the great opportunity to love on these kids in a very different way than parents get to. And that is getting very curious and interested in every piece of what they do. So, the very first thing that we do is what I call the get to know you session. And it's a lot more than, hey, just tell me about your life. It is, I'm listening for clues. I'm listening for those things that I hear over and over that they might be saying that they don't necessarily notice or their parents don't notice, but I start to notice. And I'll give you an example of this. I was working with a girl, her name was Gabrielle, and she was a sophomore in college. She's taking biochemical engineering, doing awesome at it. But she was to a point, she said, Kristen, I don't know why I'm doing it. I can do the math, but I'm not loving it. I don't feel the connection. So we talked a little bit, and a lot of what Gabrielle brought up was things around food. She liked to bake. She liked having friends over around food. Just a lot of food stuff came up. So when I was talking to her mom, I said, hey, talk to me a little bit about this. What's the thing with Gabrielle and food? And the very first thing that came out of her mouth, Sherry, was, oh my gosh, Kristen, Gabrielle, from when she could start reading, would go to the grocery store and pull items off the shelf and start reading the ingredients. And I was like, did she really now? That's interesting. So when I went back to Gabrielle, I said, hey, listen, your mom told me this story. Tell me about it. And she lit up and she said, I am just fascinated with the ingredients that go into food. And I was like, Gabrielle, if you could do something like that around your work, would it make you happy? She's like, that would be so cool.
Mm.
And I said, okay, do me a favor. I want you to go talk to your professor. I feel like you're in the right spot in biochemical engineering, but let's validate that, which is a lot of the language that I use. It's like, let's validate before we move forward. She called me the next day and she said, yeah, we're good. I'm in exactly the right place.
Really?
Because, yeah, but here's what happened, Sherry. We connected this idea. So she was in the right place, right? She did the math. You're talking about that biochemical engineering stuff. I can't even articulate that because I don't know enough about it. But all we needed was that connection of food to go, wow, once you layer these on top of each other, the math and the science and food, she was off to the races. And she hasn't stopped because it made sense to her.
Mm.
And that's what I find is where there's interest and where there's skills, and then you layer in your strengths on top of that, all of a sudden, this is easy. Now you've got the easy button.
So what I'm hearing is that you can work with a young adult who's already in school or in a job and help them find clarity around that, or even more specifically, hone in on what kind of strengths they can pull from that position. So they don't necessarily have to change. They just got to find what it is about what they're doing that really, as you say, lights them up. And I love that expression. But then you also work with young adults who have no idea what they want to do. So
Absolutely.
is that
Yeah.
easier
And
though? Almost when you have like a tabula rasa and you almost can start from scratch, you
it
know?
depends. Every kid is so different and every journey is very different. Sometimes it's so obvious to me, and sometimes the client just needs that head nod where they've had something in the back of their mind that they knew that they were interested in, but they needed somebody to reassure them that they had good ideas.
Right.
Right. So a lot of times, when I said I get to love on them and they're like, well, yeah, I've kind of been thinking about it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Tell me more about that. What do you know about that? What does that look like to you? What scares you about that? And we get to have this great conversation. And all of a sudden you can see them leaning into the camera and, just their eyes light up. They sit up a little bit taller. Their voice goes up a little bit. And every time that happens, Sherry, I know I've got them because there's interest there and they're excited about it. Once you get that, it's really easy to get to the next step.
Right. It's
Now,
like a breakthrough. You make a breakthrough.
it is.
Yeah.
Now, I gave you the ones that are easier.
Yeah.
They already had kind of an idea, but
Right.
nobody was
Right.
nobody
Remember,
was
I'm the
validating.
parent that came to you that says my kid has no idea. Like I asked them, what do you like? What do you want to do? And it's like deer in the headlights. They don't know. So, that's I want to talk about that young adult right now because I think that's what a lot of parents that's at least listening to this podcast, they're struggling with that. I think parents whose young adults are already working or kind of in school, I don't think they're as worried about them as the young adult who's sitting in their room or the basement and has no clue.
So it's still the digging of what do you do when nobody's making you do anything type questions. What kind of things did you love in school? And I tell them, I'm like, go back to kindergarten and lunch and recess are on the table. If those were your favorite parts of school, tell me about that. Because I think it tells you a lot about who they are and their personality and the types of things that they're going to be interested in. So getting all of those things just out on the table, I always tell my clients, I'm like, listen, I'm going to throw ideas at you. Be really okay with throwing them right back at me and going, that was a dumb idea, Kristen. So I give them the okay to say no, which I don't think parents do a lot, by the way. They'll go, you'd be good at. Then I also give them a career assessment. To me, the career assessment is very different from what they do when they're in school. A lot of schools do the career assessment. The difference is this: we talk about it. In
Mm.
school, they give them a career assessment. They're like, okay, go figure it out, go pick it out. And there's so many things that aren't so straightforward as looking at a career assessment and saying, I don't know, I'm going to be a landscape architect. Well, I'll give you another really quick story. I was working with a kid named Noah. He came to me and he goes, Kristen, I love golf. Oh my gosh. He goes, I love going to the restaurants. I love going to the pro shop. I love everything about it. I love playing. And he goes, and he leaned into the camera and he goes, I even love the smell of the grass. And we laughed about it, we talked. What he's doing now is he's at A&M studying landscape architecture with the end result of designing golf courses. So there's, again, you got to spark that, what's going to get them excited about this?
Yeah.
Of course, we married it with some skills of his. He's very creative. We married it with his strengths and why that made sense. But it's, taking that career assessment and having the conversations around why that career? Why does that look interesting to you? And really having them figure out, what activities within that career, and this is key, I'm going to say it one more time. What activities within that career make you think that you're going to like it? Because a career, your job, it's about what you do every day.
Yeah.
And if you can wrap your head around that, that's key. I talked to a lot of girls that their parents said, "Oh, you should be a nurse." So they go, "Okay, well, I guess I should be a nurse." And I asked them the hard questions. I asked them, "Well, how do you feel about puke and pee and poop?" And, the ones that are like, "Yeah, I'm good." I'm like, "Okay, let's keep talking." The ones that are like, "Ew, Kristen." And I'm like, "Guys, it's part of the job." And it is, let's face it, it's not all the job, but you got to do that stuff. And the reality is that's part of it. So really having these, I guess, very thoughtful conversations and upfront conversations about here's what you're going to be doing when you're there. And what do you think of that? Is
Mm.
that still a good option, or are there some really hard stops in there? But you'd be amazed, how much they know and how much they don't know. I can't tell you how many kids are like, "I don't want to work in an office." I'm like, "Well, what do you think that looks like?"
Right. That's the most general statement ever. I don't want to work
Mm-hmm.
in an office. It's because they honestly, they don't know. They don't know. And
No,
I'm sure that a lot of these kids come to you with almost no work experience. So they don't even know what it's like to actually have a job and how many layers there are in that job. There's so many responsibilities that can go with one job. So I'm sorry I interrupted you, but
no,
go ahead.
you're exactly right. They don't know,
Yeah.
and nobody's having these conversations with them.
Yes.
That's the challenge. And I can't tell you how many times I'm doing a TikTok video or a podcast or one of these sharing information, and parents come back and say, "Why are you pressuring these kids to have these conversations? They can't pick out a career at 16 years old." And I got to the point, Sherry, that I was like, "Am I wrong? Am I like barking up the wrong tree here?" So I just asked all my clients, I'm like, "Guys, tell me, is this too pressure filled for you? Like, do you feel like you can't do this?" And I will tell you, every time they look at me and they're like, "Why would we not want to talk about this?" So they want to have these conversations, Sherry. And I always say, talk is cheap. Why are we not starting these conversations when these kids are in elementary school? And talking about, I remember standing outside my kitchen window with my kids, and they were really young, and we were having a pool put into the ground. And I was out there, and at the time, I wasn't thinking down these lines. I was like, "Yep, you know what? They're out there in the hot sun, putting all those stones up. You could be doing that if you don't go to college." So I was right there doing the same thing.
Oh,
And now I look at it and I go, "Why wasn't the conversation, wow, I wonder who figured out how to do a wall like that the very first time? Would that be fun for you to do?"
mhm.
Or, "I wonder who picked out or knew how to do those stones and pick that out and make it look pretty." There's so many better questions or better thoughts that we could have as parents when
100%.
we're seeing work activity.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
I'm going to share a quick story with you. It's not career related, but it's kind of asking that question that triggers a response rather than that blank look on their face. When my brother was younger and he was lost, that was my actual first experience with a young adult who's essentially failing to launch into adulthood. And my mother was not equipped to have any kind of conversation with him about this. So I said to him, "What do you want to do?" "No, I don't know. I don't know. What do you like?" "I don't know." And I go, "When were you the happiest?" And he like looked at me like, I could tell you when I was the happiest. And that's what he did. He went away. He went to live abroad in an environment that he thrived in. And so you're using words, and I'm hearing you say, happy, fun. I think that's the biggest problem. It's almost like we're not giving our kids a chance to find a career that actually is fun for them. You can be happy in what you do, right? I mean, it
And
wasn't
enjoy it.
right.
Yes.
Yeah. And, that's the one thing about social media, that it's kind of giving young kids or young adults a chance to go, I really love whatever, makeup. I really love doing makeup. Now, maybe they thought there's no career for makeup, really, nothing at least that they could do outside of a hobby. But getting onto social media, doing makeup, all of a sudden they start teaching and inspiring other people. And now all of a sudden they actually have a career doing what they love. So even though
Yes.
we talk about social media, there has been some benefits to it. COVID was, terrible on so many levels, but on the one benefit is that kids were home alone. And if they weren't spiraling, they were going, what can I do with my time? I have a camera. How can I spend this time doing something I love, because nothing else, I can't work.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even go to school. So I'm here. And I think that what you're doing is you're kind of excavating, you're bringing up the things that they've been told are not allowed to be talked about because they were like things that you did when you were a kid. But the things that you did when you were a kid, the things that make you happy as a young adult, you have permission. You have permission to do what you love to do. We just got to find it in the career that you're already in, or find a career that allows you to.
Yeah.
So,
Now, do you want to know the next thing that's going to come out of a parent's mouth?
yes.
You can't make any money at that, Sherry.
Ugh.
That's the next thing. When I'm talking to my clients and they're bringing up money, I always ask them, I'm like, how important is money to you? And I
Mm.
get one of two answers. I want to be rich, 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 or I just want to have a nice life, be able to take a vacation here and there and take care of my family. Those are the only two answers I ever get, Sherry. Here's the benefit for parents. These kids know, at some point they're going to have to make enough money to take care of their family. So they get the end joke on this. But when I'm working with them, the first thing I tell them is this: I heard you. I like money too. Let's not talk about money yet. I can get you to the money. What I want to focus on first is, what do you want to do that's going to make you happy? We'll figure it out. And they're like, oh, come on. I'll have a parent that'll raise their hand. What about teachers? And I'm like, yeah, they're easy to pick on because notoriously they're not making nearly enough and they should be making more money. We get that. But think about somebody like Tony Robbins or John Maxwell, where these people are teachers, they're training, they're making millions and millions of dollars. I
Mhm.
can get you to the money. So that's where I think that we as parents, we get kind of messed up too, is when our kids are coming to us with ideas. The first thing that we're doing is like the whack-a-mole, where it's like, can't make enough money at that. That's not realistic. I don't know that you can do that. Oh my gosh, that's going to take this much schooling. Instead of letting them talk it through, what I've found is they're never going to make a silly decision. They're not. They get it. And most of the time, if it's something that is so far out there, they're going to kind of lose traction anyway and go, I don't know if I want to put the time and energy into it.
Mhm.
However, if you get the kid that they're like, no, I still want to put the time and energy into it, why would you squelch that?
Right.
Right? If they wanted to be a park ranger, and we know they're not going to make a ton of money, but they're like, that would make me happy every day of my life. As a parent, isn't that truly what you want for your kid?
Mhm.
So you go, you know what? Then they're making a lifestyle choice. Let's educate them. Let's validate their choices, make sure that they understand what that looks like. And if they're still gung ho, guys, it's their life and they're the only ones that can decide this.
Yeah. So what happens when parents start seeing their young adults discovering their strengths? Like first of all, they're having almost these aha moments, but like what does a parent do when you go, you know what, your young adult really loves doing this, and we can find something that caters to that passion? What do parents do with that? Do they push back? Do they give you a hard time? Or they are so happy that their kid is finally figuring out something that lights them up?
I have not had a parent that turned down or said, oh my gosh, no way. That doesn't make sense. We're not doing that. But I want you to understand the people that have hired me, I think are already down that track of, I just want my kid to be happy. So for them, I've already weeded out a lot of people that are like, no, my kid's going to be a doctor or a lawyer or this, make it happen. And quite frankly, I wouldn't take them as a client because my philosophy is, again, the world's your oyster. What's going to make you happy as a kid, as my client, you're my client. You're the person I'm worried about. I'm not worried about if mom and dad are going to be happy with what you chose. We'll deal with that later. We'll figure that out. Because again, you're the only person that can make this happen. You're the only person that has to do this for 40, 50, 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
You're the only person that can decide if it's going to make you happy. Right. But for parents, the other thing that I would tell you is I've had clients where I'm working with them. We're maybe 6 weeks in, and the parent comes and they're like, why have they not decided yet, Kristen? And these are usually the ones that are up against a clock, right? That are either they're needing them to get out of their house or they're trying to decide on colleges or something like that. And my answer to them is this: you don't want them to rush this answer. This is not a hurry up and figure it out answer. And if they do figure it out, yay. But I always talk about, I'm only trying to get them into what I call the pie shape. And even the kids that come out and they say, yeah, I have a pretty good feel that like this is the area I want to be in. I'm like, great, leave room for change. Because as you go to college or get out in the work world and you experience more, your ideas may change and they may shift, but they're going to shift typically within that pie shape. So everything that you're doing, you're building upon itself. So for a parent, and let's say they are getting ready for college, I'm like, don't stop because we don't have the exact answer. We're within this area. So we're typically taking, I don't know, the 1,500 majors that are out there and reducing it down to a handful that you want to consider. And I'm like, you don't stop making decisions because we don't have this completely figured out. You go down the path that makes the most sense for right now.
Yeah.
But at least we're weeding out a lot of the stuff we know we don't want to do.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's funny that you say that because I often say knowing what you don't like or knowing what you don't want to do is actually part of the discovery process.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So don't push that aside. Oh, I don't like that. Tell me why you don't like it. Or that's okay. That's okay that you don't like that. That's actually good information. So I love that you say that what you don't like is just as important as what you do like. Right.
Yeah.
So what changes do you, so that's what, so the parent starts like, they're feeling the sense of relief because I'm guessing maybe 5 years ago, and again, I'm just ballparking what age they come to you, they might have been the parent that said, do something that makes you a living, do something that I can be proud of or you can be proud of. But now, years later, they're going, I just want them to be happy. I just want them out of the house and feeling productive and confident. I just want my child to be happy. So whatever they want to do, as long as they're doing something and not sitting around, that's great. But I wonder if they were that parent years before.
Well, you're bringing up a really good point. And this is a stat that you don't hear out there a lot. 30% of our kids that go into college don't make it to their sophomore year. 30%. So 1 out of 3 are heading off to college. And I want you to think about that. We're taking tests, we're doing essays, we're doing applications, we're visiting schools, we're doing all this work, we're doing the dorm shopping, for your decor, all that stuff. You're driving to school, you're dropping them off. They get there and college is uncomfortable. That first year is uncomfortable. And as parents, we forget that because we remember the fun stuff, right? We remember when it was, oh, we had all these great parties and it was the time of our life. We forget that first year you're sleeping in a room 10 feet from somebody you might not know. You're eating food you're not used to eating. You're filling every waking moment, which you've never had to do in your whole life. And the big one, you're having to make a completely new set of friends. So college is not fun that first semester. I shouldn't say that. It still can be fun, but it's uncomfortable.
Yes.
Now, add on top of that, I'm here and I don't know why I'm here.
Mm.
And it's so much easier for those kids to go, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing. I need out. However, you got a kiddo that goes in and they're like, I have a good idea of why I'm here and what I'm trying to get accomplished. Now, when things are uncomfortable, guess what happens? They're like, yeah, I'll figure it out because I know what I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But to send these kids off on this $150,000 experiment and they have no idea why they're there or what they're trying to get accomplished, I was like, who does that? We wouldn't do that in normal life, and it's a lot of pressure.
I'm Canadian, and
Mm-hmm.
well, the provinces in Canada do things a little bit differently. But where I went to school, you didn't go to university at 18. You actually had 2 years. It was called like a college, but you had 2 years to kind of, as if you were in university. You got to pick your courses, create your schedule. You were, it was still in your city, but that was, for me, changed everything, because in high school it was the same curriculum over and over again. You just learned more, and I was one of those kids that was so uninterested. Obviously, I think I was undiagnosed ADHD. I was that little girl that was staring out the window because I couldn't get it together in the class. Nothing interests me. But when I went to that college program, those 2 years, and everybody did it, all of a sudden you can pick courses that spoke to you. And that was
That you care about.
I cared about.
Yes.
And that was the
Yes.
first time I was able to take psychology. And wow, Kristen, my world completely changed. I could do something that I love to do, which was, studying human behavior and why people do the things that they do. And it was just general psych. But it allowed me that after that first semester, it allowed me to keep learning more and more about it. And I changed. I knew by the time I got into university 2 years later, I knew exactly what I needed to do, what I wanted to do. I don't know how you can expect an 18-year-old. And it's funny because where I live now, it's more like that. It's more like at 18, they have to choose their, major and stuff like that. But I always wanted my children to know that nothing's permanent. And maybe it's because you're right. Like, I have made career changes. I started off doing one thing, and then I had to pivot for financial reasons, and I pivoted again for reasons that I wanted to, not die with the music in me, as they say. So I think that there's so much on kids today that our expectations for them to know what they want to do, when we know as parents that we're still so immature at that age. But I do like the idea of that pie shape. We're going to something that like just moves you a little bit, something that it might not be like, the standard career paths that everybody talks about, but you'll figure it out if you at least do what you love.
And start in the direction. Like, think about you in psychology. Think about all the things you can do with psychology. My gosh, you could go into film where you're helping them develop characters based on, what kind of, person you want them to look like on film. You could go into schools and, work with children. You could figure out why old people and dementia, how it affects X, Y, and Z. There's so much you can do with psychology, but you knew you loved that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So think about, then you get to try some new things and try working with old people, with young people, with different, just different ideas. And all of a sudden you're moving in the right direction.
Right.
This isn't, it's so interesting because it's not difficult, but it's not easy, right? It's simple, but it's not easy, I think, is the right term that everybody uses. But it is a matter of marinating and trying. And I always have my students talk to somebody that have been doing something sort of like what they're thinking they want to do. And I always say it that way because I was like, don't get so stuck on one thing. If it's kind of in the general area of something you're interested in, that person's going to tell you stuff. And they may tell you stuff that you didn't know. And you might find that you really love something that they're doing, that's closer to what they're doing. So going and talking to people, and they love it. Sherry, they get so afraid before they do it. But once they've done it, they're like, Kristen, you won't believe what I all found out. And they get really excited that somebody's willing to help them and talk to them.
Yeah.
But then it sets them up for doing it over and over and over again. And they'll do it for me. They don't want to always do it for mom and dad. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So what advice? Okay, no, this is actually more important. So parents are often walking around on eggshells. They don't know what to say, and they really just want to help. So what's the role of the parent in terms of support? What do you suggest to the parent that they should say or not say during this process?
What I tell parents to do is when their child comes to them at any age and has an idea about a career, their best bet is to have no opinion at all. In a perfect world, you have zero opinions. I know it's hard because, hey, we've for 18 to 26 years, we've had really good, stuff that we can tell our kids, and it's turned out pretty well. I always tell them to say this, and I don't care what word you put it in, but that's really interesting. Tell me more. Because what you're wanting to find out, you're on an expedition.
Say that again.
That's really interesting. Tell me more. Let's talk about what you're doing when you do that. You're telling them that they're making good choices. They have good ideas. Instead of, oh, you can't make money at that. Oh, do you know it's going to take this many years for school to do that? Think about the message you're sending your kid when you say those types of things. You're telling them you don't have good ideas. You're not making good decisions. And when you just stop, take the pause and say, that's really interesting. Tell me more. They're like, oh, they want to hear. That's real. Oh, okay. And then they're going to open up and start talking to you more. At first, they may look at you like you've got three eyeballs because they're used to you coming to them and having the answer and, doing whatever. And quite frankly, a lot of times kids will come to you and look for your opinion.
Right.
Don't give it to them. Don't give it to them. It's not your choice. It's their choice. Yeah. So even if they're like, no, tell me what you think, you can say, well, let's look at the pros and cons.
What do you think?
Based on those, what do you think? Right? There's always a way to turn this back around.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion, my opinion and my thoughts on how do you do this right? And that's by having no opinion at all.
That's great advice. I love that. So more advice. What do you say to the parent who's ready to do this, counseling, this career assessment, and they want to bring it up with their young adult, but they don't want that resistance. They don't want to trigger them, because we know that you can't force a young adult to do something that they don't want to do. So, I would, just kidding, but I would encourage my young adult to try something out if they don't know what they want to do. I am a big advocate of that. But what do you say to a parent that says, I want to do this, but how do I get my kid in here? Do you have any tricks for that? Because I feel like a lot of parents are going to want to say, this would be great, but they won't listen to me.
It's tapping into that emotion of being a little scared. I always say, my product is a little bit of a fear-based product in that I catch students at the time and young adults at the time when they're feeling that fear. In high school, it's, I don't know what I want to major in. I know I don't know what I'm doing and I'm afraid. For that young kid in college, I'm changing my major again and I've got no idea what to pick. I'm at a loss. I'm afraid. It's that kid getting ready to graduate from college and they're like, I'm getting this diploma and I don't even know what I want to do. I'm afraid because they're seeing that freight train coming at them, right? And the last one is, hey, I've got this first job. I hate it and I don't know what to do and I'm afraid. So tapping into that, listen, don't you want to feel good? Don't you want to feel like you know what you want to do? And you're going to be doing this and heading down this path for the rest of your life. Let's talk about it now. And I get both ends of the spectrum on this, Sherry. I get they've got no interest in at all. And I'm like, good, don't have them talk to me because they're not going to want to open up and open their minds to different ideas. And then I just had a guy the other day goes, I can't believe it, but she's so excited about coming to your class. I've got group classes for high school students. But I think they're ready and they know that they don't know what they're doing. So they're like, wow, this is actually something I'm interested in and I want to learn. Yeah. So it's really that, thinking about and looking at the emotional side of it.
Yeah. It's funny. You mentioned the word fear like 3 times. And I think that young adults are afraid to tell their parents how afraid they are, because parents are worried, right? They're anxious about what's going on with their young adult. And so these young kids, they can tell you that they're afraid, but they won't tell their parents because they don't want to add to their parents' already, they're already worried state of mind. So they don't say, and I feel like even when I talk to my kids and there's a change happening that it's unknown and they don't know what's on the other side of it. I want them to say the word, I'm afraid, I'm scared, I don't know. We don't allow our children to say that out loud to us because they don't want to worry us. So we have to rise above that and say, if you're afraid of it, I've been there. I was afraid too to make that change. I get that feeling, and it's okay. It's okay.
And Sherry, let's not discount the fact that parents are afraid during this time frame too. Some of it is, oh my gosh, so-and-so's kid just got into Yale and they know that they want to study medicine and da 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 da. So we've got like that fear of keeping up with the Joneses, and we've got our fear of, oh my gosh, are they ever going to be able to get out of my house? I don't even see them being able to take care of themselves now. How are they ever going to do this? So there's emotion going on both sides of this as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, that's why I think bringing the third person in is actually very healthy, because now I'm playing the go-between and helping the kid navigate through this, and then keeping the parents kind of informed on what's happening and why, and also helping the parents to go, you know what, I know that you're in a hurry, but you need to relax for a minute. Okay. But here's why.
Mm-hmm.
You want your kid to be able to think through this. So helping them on both sides to go, you can be less afraid. We've got a system for this.
Mm-hmm. I think that one of the biggest issues for this age group, I want to say the word cohort because I just like the word cohort, but one of the biggest issues of this age group is hopelessness. Hopelessness. And I believe that what you're doing is more than just helping them find the layers in their career or even a starting point for a career. I think you provide them with hope. I really do. And I think that's so important. And not just hope for the young adults. I think you provide the parents with hope. And there's no price that you can put on that. I think that's the gift of what you bring to these families. Is that?
Thank you. And I would agree with you, because there's such, we didn't talk about CliftonStrengths and what that does for the kids too. I think you might have asked me and I might have just went past it.
I want to know, what are the emotional parts of discovering your strengths?
Especially for young people. I think this is true for everybody, but I think especially for young people, it's this idea of, wow, you know what? I am good at those things, because when they read the report, the reports are so good, Sherry, that they see themselves in those strengths, and they can come up with stories where they're like, yeah, you know what? That reminds me of when I did this for my friend. So they can see that strength. And having that, like that buildup of, wow, okay, you can see them just grow on screen, where they're like, I have merit. I do have things that are good for me. The other part that I love is when parents, I always make sure the parents get their report, they read it, and then I encourage them to go and talk to their kid and say, tell me more about what you guys talked about. And what a great way to also love on your kid in a way that you don't always get, to be able to say, oh my gosh, you are good at that. Think about when you did this or when you did that. And now all of a sudden the parent is piling on top and saying, I see it too.
Yes.
And think about that kid now. He's sitting there going, look at me, and he gets a little swagger to him.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. It's so powerful.
Yes. And I imagine that when a young adult starts discovering their strengths, all of a sudden they're motivated again, because we know that motivation is one of the problems that we're seeing, is that our kids are just not motivated. It's because they don't have direction. And that's what you do, providing that self-reflection, putting, words to their skills. You motivate them now. They have like purpose.
I can't tell you how many families have come back to me and said they had no interest in planning for college whatsoever. And now they're coming to me going, Mom, did you know that the college of so-and-so has this type of program? And they're like, I don't understand. And I'm like, they can see it. They now have like something they can attach to, and they're excited about it because they can actually visualize it. And I
Yeah.
think that's the big part, that it's something they're excited about, and it's real now. It's tangible.
They have like a new perspective. Their future almost is like you're turning on the light bulb.
Yeah.
They're in a dark room, their bedroom or their basement, and they come and see you and you flip the switch. Yes, it's a process, but when you do it, I mean, it must be transformational. I can only imagine.
It's fun to watch. It really is fun to watch.
Yeah. So tell me about this parent lab. I noticed that on your website. What is with the parent lab?
Yeah. So that's brand new. It's going to
Mm,
launch shortly.
okay.
The premise behind it is for those parents that cannot talk their kids into working with me, or maybe funds are not as plentiful and it's just harder to do the coursework. Parents can come, pop in. I've got 4 sessions a month. They can pop in. I'm going to do a mini conversation about something on careers, and a lot of it's the stuff we've talked about already, and then let them ask and answer questions, not only from me but from the people in the group. So if somebody's already been through it, they can throw in their discoveries and what they found. But
Mm,
it's really a place for parents to come to get these answers on, how do I talk to my kid about careers, because they don't know how. Parents aren't equipped for this either. And what I'm finding is, a lot of my work, I go out and speak a lot about what I do, because it is a disruptor. Not a lot of people are doing the work that I do with this age group.
mm,
And it's not something that people think about, oh, I need a career coach for my teenager. But once they hear me speak and, the things that I do with students, they're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And a lot of the reasons that they have all these aha moments are, they're like, oh, yeah, I've been doing this all wrong. So having a place for them to just come and learn, and so that they can have these conversations at home.
mm. So it's essentially a support group for parents who need help even before their young adult has come to you? Are they there because?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Even before, during, and after,
Right.
to have because, in any type of coaching, there's, different things that happen throughout the journey.
Mhm.
So for them to be able to come to me and go, Kristen, you worked with them 6 months ago, and all of a sudden something else happened, and now they're interested in this path. What do I do?
Right.
Being able to still have that conversation, I think, is key.
Right. And we have to, in parents' defense, and we are in that, group, no one asked us what
Oh,
our
no.
interests are. So it's
Mm-mm.
not that they don't know because they're not good parents. No one asked them. There was just the assumption many years ago that you were either just going to be a stay-at-home parent and that you weren't, there was all these traditional roles. No one ever asked a young woman, do you want to do that? Or would you like to have both? Would you like to have a career? So our parents, these parents don't know. And so I love that you become the voice and the teacher to the parent and the counselor and coach to the young adult. Especially because, and I was thinking about this as you were talking, when you said that you show the assessment to the parents, one thing I don't like about the mental health world is that when a young adult hits the age of 18 and then they go speak to a doctor, now that doctor is not allowed to talk to the parent, which I think is a big mistake because they might be 18 or 20 or 24, but developmentally, emotionally, they aren't. They're 16. They are actually below the age of, where you can't talk to the parent. So I find that that's one of the biggest problems. And I love the fact that you bring the parent into this process. So I think more parents should be a part of the learning and the changing and the issues that their kids are having. It shouldn't be that they're left outside the door and I'll work with your
Agreed.
kid. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely agreed. And of course, I do always ask my student clients, my young clients, hey, I'm going to send this to your mom and dad. Is that okay? Never once is anybody, worried, but I want them to know that, I'm respecting them as well.
Right.
But it's such a really cool conversation. And I agree with you. I got blindsided by that when my son turned 18
Mm.
in college. And that was a crummy place to be, when you were sitting on the outside and you didn't have any access to get to him for a health reason.
Hmm.
and you have no answers. So, and I can share a good resource if you don't already have one for parents for that, to get the paperwork done before they go to college so that you can have access.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
share
that's
that.
great. Because my children were open about their, what was going on. They trusted me that if they weren't doing well at something, tell me so we can get you out of that class before you're either going to get it on your, transcript, or it's going to cost money. So they were always much more open because I wasn't going to give them a hard time. I wanted them to know that they have permission to change, to pivot, to get out of something, to not have the overload or the work overload. So, yeah, I love that idea. So we'll put that in the show notes so parents can have that access. I don't think kids want to be thrown in there on their own and left to their own devices. I think they want to know that there's a support system, that you're
There's a
part of
backup
this.
plan.
Yeah, yeah. So for parents who are interested in booking a session with you, you offer a free consultation? Like
I
what's
do.
okay. So I'm going to leave your contact information in the show notes, so it will be very easy for them to reach you. But does the free consultation, what information do you provide them, or what questions are they asking? Like, again, for our listener, they're ready. They'll do the free consultation, but what can they expect when they meet with you?
Absolutely. So going on my website is the best way, KristenClark.com. We've kept it simple. And looking at what I do, typically when parents come to me, it's, yes, my child needs some help. Tell me what your process is and which program should I be involved in. That's usually the biggest question, is which one makes the most sense for my kid.
Got it. I always like to leave on a positive note. That's why not? Sometimes the conversations are so heavy. So, what is one message that you would like parents who have listened to this episode, what do you want them to walk away with?
That you have a really amazing kid. Every one of them is so unique and so interesting and so cool. And they can make these decisions for themselves. They have the capability to make these decisions. Your job is just to help them do that.
I don't know. I feel emotional. I love that. Kristen, thank you so much for being here today. I mean, we could keep talking about this forever.
All day.
Right? But I want parents to just listen to this and just get right on front of their computer or look down at the show notes. And I want them to go, oh, finally, there's somebody out there that can be the bridge between me connecting with my young adult who doesn't know what they want to do, and the bridge to my child finding their strengths and discovering who they are. So I think that this conversation is going to give parents, if nothing else, that hope that there is a way out of their room or their basement or their dorm if they're miserable, and a clear path forward. So I'm glad we got to talk today, and you are welcome back here anytime. I just love this conversation. I feel like you were like a missing link for me, because I was telling parents, go figure out what's going on with your kid, try these assessments. But that's not easy for any parent to do. So you are a breath of fresh air. So
awesome. No, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Yeah, we'll do this again for sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Kristen. I hope today's episode gave you valuable insights and actionable steps that will help you guide your young adult to launch successfully into adulthood. If you found this topic helpful, feel free to leave a comment and hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Leaving a 5-star review helps us reach more parents who are dealing with the same issues. And if there's something you want to ask me, I invite you to join Launch Advice, my weekly publication where I answer one question from parents just like you. It's free advice that will appear in your inbox probably when you need it the most. Just click Launch Advice in the show notes, and don't forget to email me your confidential question. And remember, no one ever said parenting is easy, especially when you're raising an adult. Talk to you soon.